If you love classic cars, I really need your help to keep this channel alive. The channel is new and we need subscribers. Please subscribe to help us grow and bring more classic car videos for you. Support us with your subscription and your like, it's very important for the channel. From the late 1950s onward, the American automotive landscape began to enter a period of transformation that would define not only engineering and design but the cultural heartbeat of an entire generation. Among the machines that shaped this era, one name emerged as a symbol of prestige, power, presence, and dominance on the streets from coast to coast, the Chevrolet Impala. When the first official Impala arrived in 1958, nobody knew it would quickly become the embodiment of the American dream on wheels, a rolling monument to chrome, size, comfort, and the growing hunger for speed. In a time when America was booming, families were larger, roads were wider, and confidence was soaring to new heights, the Impala appeared not just as a car but as a statement. It said something powerful about anyone who drove it, turning everyday streets into runways where this machine strutted like a proud giant. The first Impala came into a world that was still adjusting to post-war prosperity. Car buyers wanted something that felt expensive even if it wasn't priced beyond their reach. Chevrolet understood this desire better than anyone and delivered an automobile that mixed elegance with aggression. The 1958 model introduced the iconic triple taillight signature and debuted a large, imposing body that instantly caught attention. It wasn't sleek like European machines and it wasn't delicate, it was unapologetically American. Wide, long, heavy, loud, and dripping in chrome, it looked like something built to rule highways rather than merely drive on them. When people saw an Impala pull into a parking lot, it seemed to stretch across the entire space, commanding respect without saying a word. The late 1950s were also a time when engines were getting bigger each year. The Impala fit perfectly into this movement with power plants that satisfied both the casual driver and the speed enthusiast. Chevrolet saw the Impala not just as a luxury cruiser but as a platform capable of power. The available V8 engines, especially the 348 cubic-inch motor, gave drivers something to brag about. The deep growl of a Chevy V8 echoed across towns, becoming a familiar sound that people associated with excitement. It wasn't just transportation, it was performance that made your chest vibrate when you pressed the pedal. By 1959 and 1960, the Impala evolved dramatically in design. Those years became legendary because of the radical styling choices Chevrolet made. The famous batwing rear fenders, the cat-eye taillights, and the wide, flat rear deck created a shape that looked almost alien compared to anything else on the market. It was polarizing, but even critics had to admit one thing: nobody could ignore it. The Impala became instantly recognizable from blocks away. Teenagers idealized it. Adults respected it. Mechanics loved working on it. No car embodied that era of American extravagance quite like the Impala. When people talk about the most iconic cars of the late 1950s, the 1959 and 1960 Impalas constantly appear at the top of the list because they weren't just cars, they were sculptures made of steel. As the 1960s arrived, the American auto industry entered one of its greatest decades. The Impala grew even more powerful and deeply connected to the culture. Rock and roll had taken over radios, youth rebellion became a force, and cars weren't just machines, they were extensions of identity. Owning a Chevrolet Impala meant something. It meant you cared about style, but also about power. It meant you wanted comfort but also the ability to dominate the road whenever you wished. Chevrolet understood that the Impala was no longer just a model, it was a legend in the making. By 1961, Chevrolet unveiled a more refined and cleaner design, replacing the batwings with smoother, more conservative lines, yet keeping the strong presence of the Impala intact. This model year also gave birth to something that elevated the Impala into a new level of performance admiration, the Impala SS, or Super Sport. The SS badge would become synonymous with power, speed, and prestige, and few cars from this era embody that combination better than the Impala. With optional high-performance engines like the 409, the Impala moved from being a cruiser to a legitimate street monster. The phrase, 409, became part of American pop culture thanks to songs, drag strips, and stories told by those who lived the golden era of American muscle. By the mid-1960s, Chevrolet had perfected the formula. The Impala from 1965, for example, represented one of the high points of the model's history. With its long, sweeping body, well-defined edges, and imposing front grille, it looked like a car ready to conquer anything. Sales skyrocketed, and the Impala became the best-selling car in America. It dominated the market because it offered something no competitor could match: the perfect blend of luxury, size, performance, and affordability. Families bought it because it was comfortable and reliable. Younger drivers bought it because it looked incredible and could be modified easily. Enthusiasts bought it because the V8 engines and rear-wheel drive layout made it perfect for performance upgrades. As more engines became available, the Impala offered everything from relaxed six-cylinder setups to massive V8 beasts that delivered the kind of acceleration people still talk about today. The 396 and the legendary 427 made the Impala not just a large car but a fearsome machine that could go toe-to-toe with some of the best muscle cars of the era. Drag racers knew that an Impala with the right setup could surprise anyone at the track. Street racers respected it because it hid its power under a gentleman's suit. It didn't look like a lightweight muscle car, yet it had enough muscle to intimidate any challenger. The Impala had become a wolf in a polished, chrome-covered outfit. Inside, the car represented everything Americans loved about comfort. Wide bench seats, lots of legroom, a spacious trunk, and smooth suspension created an unmatched driving experience. Long trips felt effortless. The Impala glided across highways like a ship on calm water. The engine noise, deep, confident, and unmistakably American, added to the charm. Families created memories inside these cars. People traveled cross-country, moved to new homes, and experienced some of their most important life moments riding in an Impala. Many owners still remember the smell of the interior, the sound of the engine starting on a cold morning, and the sight of the long hood stretching ahead like a road-leading arrow. As 1966 and 1967 arrived, the Impala continued to dominate both the streets and the imagination of the American people. These years delivered even more refined designs, aerodynamic improvements, and performance options that made the car one of the most versatile platforms Chevrolet ever created. It could be a family cruiser, a luxury ride, or a serious drag competitor depending on how the owner configured it. And that flexibility was one of its greatest strengths. No matter what you wanted, there was an Impala for you. The late 1960s also became a turning point for American society. The country was changing, and so were the automotive tastes. Muscle cars such as the Camaro, Mustang, Charger, and GTO were capturing the attention of the younger crowd with their compact size and aggressive behavior. But the Impala didn't lose its place. Instead, it evolved to keep its dominance. The 1968, 1969, and 1970 models stayed faithful to the formula that made them great: big bodies, powerful engines, and undeniable style. Even as performance regulations and fuel concerns started to appear near the end of the decade, the Impala still stood strong as a symbol of what American cars had achieved in their glory years. By 1970, the Impala had built a reputation that very few cars have ever achieved. It was a status symbol, a cultural icon, a technical success, and above all, a legend of the American road. People didn't just drive Impalas, they lived with them, grew up with them, and built stories around them. It ruled neighborhoods, highways, and even the drag strips. It was indeed the monster that dominated the streets from 1958 to 1970, a machine that represented the bold, confident, and unstoppable spirit of its era. As the Chevrolet Impala entered the final stretch of its golden era in the late 1960s, it stood firmly as one of the most influential automobiles in American history. What made the Impala truly unique during this period was not only its consistent evolution but the way it managed to remain relevant through shifting trends, cultural transitions, and growing competition. From 1958 to 1970, the Impala didn't simply adapt, it led. It dictated design cues that competitors rushed to imitate, introduced performance standards that pushed other manufacturers to improve, and captured an emotional place in the American imagination that very few cars ever could. One of the defining aspects of the Impala's later years was how it embraced the growing appetite for performance without abandoning its identity as a comfortable full-size car. The American car culture of the time was increasingly drawn toward muscle cars, compact, aggressive machines designed strictly for speed. But many drivers still wanted something bigger, something with presence. The Impala offered the best of both worlds, muscle car performance hidden inside a full-size luxury cruiser. For many enthusiasts, this blend created an irresistible formula. You didn't need to choose between comfort and power. With an Impala, you could have both in a single, commanding machine. As engine technology continued to improve, the Impala maintained its reputation for having some of the most powerful and durable V8 engines available to the public. The 396 and 427 engines, in particular, became legends. The sound of a big block Impala accelerating onto a freeway became part of the soundtrack of the late 1960s. The low, rumbling idle, the sudden surge of torque, and the roar of the exhaust under full throttle gave the Impala a personality that was impossible to ignore. These engines were engineered for endurance, and stories circulated across the country about Impalas that ran for decades with nothing more than regular maintenance. Owners trusted their cars deeply, and many families kept an Impala in the driveway long after newer models were introduced, simply because nothing else felt quite the same. Beyond performance, the Impala's interior continued to evolve with each model year. American drivers valued comfort, and the Impala delivered it in every generation. The spacious cabin, often described as living room comfort, made long trips feel luxurious. The dashboard layouts were intuitive, the materials were soft, and the seats were wide enough that families could sit together without feeling crowded. Road trips were an essential part of American life during this time, and many of those memories were created inside the roomy interior of an Impala. Whether crossing deserts, mountains, or small rural towns, the Impala offered a level of comfort that made traveling a pleasure rather than a chore. Its exterior design also matured during the late 1960s. The lines became cleaner, the bodies more aerodynamic, and the stance lower and wider. Each generation shaped the Impala into a more refined version of itself while still retaining the grandeur people expected. The chrome accents, the muscular fenders, and the long hood emphasized confidence. The flowing shape made the car look in motion even when parked. The triple taillights, a hallmark of the Impala identity, continued to shine proudly as a symbol of status and sophistication. When an Impala passed by at night, its taillights were unmistakable, a glowing signature that made the car instantly recognizable. As the years progressed, the Impala's cultural influence grew even stronger. It wasn't just a popular car, it became a moving symbol of American identity. In movies, music, and television, Impalas appeared as the cars driven by characters who were bold, stylish, or powerful. They became part of the visual language of the era. Musicians referenced them in songs. Lowrider culture embraced the Impala as a blank canvas for creativity and expression. Car clubs formed around specific years and models. Even decades later, the 1964 Impala remains one of the most customized and admired vehicles in automotive history. It became more than a car, it became a cultural artifact. The Impala's ability to resonate with so many types of people was one of its most remarkable strengths. It appealed to families because it was safe, reliable, and comfortable. It appealed to teenagers because it had presence and performance potential. It appealed to mechanics because it was simple to maintain and easy to modify. It appealed to collectors because it represented an era of American engineering at its peak. Few cars have ever achieved this level of cross-generational, cross-cultural appeal. The Impala earned respect from everyone who encountered it, whether on the road or in a showroom. By the time 1970 arrived, the automotive world was changing quickly. Environmental concerns, rising insurance costs, new regulations, and shifting consumer preferences began to reshape the industry. The era of huge engines and massive cars was slowly coming to an end. But instead of fading quietly, the Impala stood tall at the peak of its power, a final reminder of what American automakers were capable of when they prioritized boldness above everything else. The 1970 models reflected the culmination of years of refinement, sleek bodies, powerful engines, high comfort levels, and an undeniable street presence. It was as if Chevrolet wanted to send a message: if this era was ending, the Impala would leave its mark in the strongest way possible. In the decades that followed, the legend of the 1958 to 1970 Impala only grew stronger. People who lived through those years spoke fondly of their experiences with the car, and new generations discovered the Impala through restored models, movies, music, and stories passed down from older relatives. Today, seeing a well-preserved Impala from this era driving down the road is like watching history come alive. The shape, the engine sound, the chrome, and the stance all evoke the spirit of a time when cars were built with a different philosophy, a philosophy of excess, pride, and passion. Collectors and enthusiasts search tirelessly for original models, especially those with rare engine configurations or special trims. The Impala SS models with big block engines remain highly sought after. The 1959 and 1960 designs are considered some of the most unique shapes ever to roll off an assembly line. The 1964 model is a cultural icon. The 1965 model is praised for its balanced design and engineering excellence. And the late 1960s models stand as reminders of how Chevrolet adapted to changing times without losing its soul. Every year between 1958 and 1970 has its own charm and significance, making the Impala one of the most diverse and storied lineups in American automotive history. The impact of the Impala goes far beyond numbers or specifications. It represents the freedom of open highways, the pride of ownership, the thrill of acceleration, and the quiet comfort of long family trips. It represents an era when cars were built to impress not only with performance but with size, design, and personality. The Impala delivered all of that and more. For millions of Americans, it wasn't just a car, it was part of their life story. And for millions more around the world, it became a symbol of what American automotive engineering was capable of when creativity and ambition were allowed to run free. Even today, car shows around the world celebrate these machines. Enthusiasts preserve them meticulously, restoring them piece by piece to bring back the glow they had decades ago. Children climb into the seats of their parents' or grandparents' Impalas and feel a connection to the past. People tell stories of drag races, late-night drives, and unforgettable road trips. The Impala continues to inspire because it represents something timeless, the desire for beauty, power, and freedom on the open road. When looking back at the span from 1958 to 1970, it becomes clear why the Impala earned its reputation as the American monster that dominated the streets. It was born during a time of optimism, matured during a decade of cultural revolution, and reached its peak at a moment when automotive engineering was at one of its highest levels. It combined comfort, strength, reliability, and style in a way that resonated across generations. It wasn't perfect, but it was unforgettable. And in the world of automobiles, being unforgettable is the greatest achievement any machine can hope for. The Impala remains a legend not because it existed, but because it mattered. It shaped lives, influenced culture, and created a legacy that continues to thrive decades after its golden era ended. For those who drove it, dreamed of it, or admired it from afar, the Impala stands as a monument to the power of American engineering and the uncompromising spirit of an era that believed bigger, bolder, and louder was always better. From 1958 to 1970, it ruled the streets with confidence, charisma, and an undeniable presence. It truly was, and still is, the monster that dominated the roads and changed the automotive world forever.